Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Old moon, yeah. That's Hugo, tickling the ivories. He just saved by bundling home and auto with Progressive. Gonna finally buy a ring for that gal of yours, Hugo? Send her my condolences. Hi-oh! This next one's for you two. There's a burglar in my heart. Thank you.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Technology Truths, brought to you by Geico.
Technology Truths.
Truth. Teenagers can communicate entirely in emojis.
How was the birthday party? Pizza slice, kitten, soccer ball, pineapple?
Truth. It's so easy to switch and save on car insurance at geico.com.
What are you talking about? Paperclip, shoulder shrug, high five, wizard hat? What?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Welcome out to the Prototype. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, right here on thisweekingeek.net. But I'm not alone as we wrap up the summer of gaming. I am joined with
Alex.
And you have no idea how hard it was to not snap my fingers when I pointed to you. We're working on that on the show.
Mr. Snappy Snappy, make the audio go crackle crackle.
But I'm working on it. And I think I've gotten better in the last couple weeks. Working on it.
You slap yourself. I don't have to hit you anymore.
So yes, guys, we're here on the Prototype. We didn't have an episode during August simply because, well, we ran out of time, truthfully, and we were trying to do the summer of gaming. And as you guys know, we issued a challenge to each other at either late May or early June to play through a series of games. And Alex had picked out the...
And now, an ad from Dad.
All right, save money on car insurance when you bundle home and auto with Progressive. Can I take these off? All right. What is this? This looks good. Wow. That's well made. Where did you get this? I'm talking to you with the hair. Yeah, where did you get this? It's good stuff. That's solid. That's not veneer. That's solid stuff.
Progressive can't save you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money when you bundle home and auto. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Dragon Age series for me, 1 to 3.
Yep.
And then that got changed to Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and Mankind Divided. I think those are two separate games. And we'd also had tried other games. I challenged Alex to do, what was it, Skyrim?
And the Shadowrun games.
So I guess before we break into the main topic of the show, the main topic of today's show will not be the summer of gaming. We're actually going to talk about digital preservation and emulation because, as you guys know, in the last couple of weeks, a number of emulation sites have been shut down. The SNES Classic and the NES Classic are more available than ever, and Nintendo has just announced its new online service for $20 a year, or $25 Canadian. And that means it's easier to get some of these quote-unquote classic games. But we're going to talk about some of the ones you usually can't get, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're also going to have a review of Little Dragon Cafe. We're also going to have a little bit of a discussion towards the end of the show about a game Alex is reviewing or has reviewed, and I think that's SNK Heroines, I think.
Yes, SNK, the new fighting game available on Switch.
So yeah, we'll talk about that right at the end of the show. Okay, so summer of gaming for me. Alex challenged me to do the Dragon Age games made by BioWare and EA. Many critical acclaims. You're going to the land of Thetis. You're supposed to stop the Blight. You're a Grey Warden. And then you go to the city of Frieden, I think it was. Was that right, Ferelden?
This explains everything that he knows about the game.
Am I right or wrong?
The second time, Ferelden.
Ferelden, okay. All right, so I was going to call it Freeport. No, that's a Pathfinder thing. And then the last game, you're stopping. Fuck, I don't know. The sky turned green and bad shit happened. Okay, I failed.
You're no longer a gamer.
I don't like it.
I
like the lore.
You seem to only like one type of game now.
What is the one type of game that I'm into?
A stealth game with shooting.
Okay, allow me to explain what he's talking about. So earlier last month, Ubisoft had announced via backwards compatibility some of its Splinter Cell titles were coming back. And one of my favorite games of the last generation was Splinter Cell Blacklist, where they introduced not Michael Ironside as Sam Fisher. And it was a great game. I thought it was really freaking fantastic. I want to say 2013, maybe a little bit before that, maybe 2011, I don't know. But either way, it was an awesome game. I thought it was friggin' awesome, and I went back through it and really perfected my Solid Snake skills, and had a great time just being this government agent on a mission.
Ignoring your duties.
Ignoring my duties, exercising the fifth freedom, which is to kill. Yeah, I didn't finish any of the Dragon Age games. Alex did walk me through.
He was all buttered. I don't like this because it's not the game I want to play.
It's not Mass Effect. That's the thing. The engine didn't feel like Mass Effect to me.
Well, it wasn't supposed to. How do you make a shooting game when it's about magic?
Magic is ranged
and sword and sorcery.
But the thing is, you have the Omni Blade in Mass Effect 3.
You didn't get far enough into the game to get different weapons.
That's true. I couldn't get into it. The storyline, the story and the world were very interesting.
I get the first one because you just are.
It was
somebody,
a product of its time.
Like in 2008, when the first game came out, you maybe weren't the kind of person that would play those games.
Yeah.
The second game had a better battle system, but you still weren't interested. You just don't want to do that. So we skipped right to the third game, which is the best. That got
my attention a little bit more.
The third game is considered one of the best games of this generation, bar none. Like nobody, it's not even contested.
And then, I can't wait to come swinging back at you with that one.
It works. There's not really any bugs. It has a fantastic story that leads you through. You have choices to make that are dramatic and have far-reaching effects. And then Mike's like, I'm going to pout and give a sour face because I don't like it. I
just found it boring. I truly did.
But the funny thing was, it was almost. I honestly thought you weren't paying attention enough to even play it.
No, it didn't grab me like Lord of the Rings did or Mass Effect did. I was expecting. See, when I went in, I thought it was going to be medieval Mass Effect.
It is sort of. That's the idea. That's the mechanics around the interviews, talking to people, making your choices of being good or evil, and choosing your factions.
I liked the idea how at the end of the first game, you could choose to wed the one chick, and you'd have that child.
Or you could choose somebody else to wed, or you could choose not to do that. You could choose to sacrifice. There's 6 or 7 different endings.
Yeah. See, I thought that was neat. That
carries forward into what the storylines of the next games.
I thought some of the character. I liked that Vard or Varus, whatever his name was. I thought he was kind of a neat. I liked the storyline for the second game. You made me watch a video, and I'm thinking, all right, maybe this game has got a bad rap in terms of its critical reception, because I know a bunch of people didn't like it.
The reception was that it was too short, because the first game was 100 hours and it went down to 25 or 30.
I don't know. There's just something about the Dragon Age games that didn't grab me. Now, that being said, I do want to finish the third game because I have all the DLC for it.
You don't really have had to have played the first two because it explains everything you need.
It sets up the world.
Yeah, so the third game, I really do think you would like it, because you've played other titles recently that have, if not similar, it's not just the battle system, just the way it's presented, the story's presented. If you like the Spider-Man game, there's really no reason you shouldn't like this.
I don't know.
If you like games that have dialogue trees, choices, loot, you should like this. It doesn't make sense to me.
But then again, at the same time, if I want that experience, people are telling me I should go check out The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
And The Witcher 3, the only problem is combat is not fun for me. A lot of people like combat in that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dodging, parrying, changing your swords. It's a lot of
in the moment,
and also slow moving. This moves very quickly. You just hold down your trigger and you can jump around and do stuff.
See, that bothered me. I didn't like that. And I can't really put my finger on why.
Which is funny because it's similar, and as you get farther in the game, you have to do more button combinations, parrying, dodging, very similar to the Spider-Man game that you love so much right now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just...
I honestly think during the period that you were supposed to be playing these games, you were in just a funk where you only were going to be satisfied by one type of game.
Yeah.
and it might change down the line.
Yeah, because I kind of wondered, when I was playing Splinter Cell Blacklist, I kind of thought about going back through Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
You're on a stealth kick, and then
Hitman.
We said, okay, we'll switch this. We'll switch it over to Deus Ex because it's got the shooting aspect of a game that you like. It's got the
Cyberpunk.
RPG, it's cyberpunk, and then it has the RPG aspect, and you're still like, meh.
You know, the thing that bothered me about that, and it's a shooter thing, is that left trigger put you into cover. It didn't aim down sights. I had to click right analog to aim down sights, and that just didn't come naturally. I come from a Call of Duty.
You can change the control scheme.
Really? You didn't tell me that.
Yeah. I watched you, and I was like, what are you doing? Well, you didn't get past the first level.
No. I did. I got to some warehouse where you get your abilities.
Okay, so you got the second level.
Yeah, so I was like, eh. But then again, my friend Tiffany, a fellow Terrible Warrior, really likes the Deus Ex games.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give it a shot because I know she doesn't like shit.
The first Deus Ex
She also likes Dragon Age, so I don't see why I don't gel.
The first Deus Ex game I liked so much, I wrote the developers a thank you letter and mailed it to Montreal.
That's cool.
That's how much I liked it. So, moving on to me. So basically, you're an abysmal failure, but so am I. Mine is for a couple of reasons. One, you challenged me to play Skyrim. I can't get past an hour into it without wanting to smash my computer into a million pieces. I fucking hate everything about that game. To me, it's one of the worst games ever made. I can't stand the interface. I can't stand the combat. I can't stand the aimlessness of it, where it doesn't lead you anywhere. I don't like games that are so open that you just don't have any direction. I also don't like the graphics. I don't like... There's so many aspects, and I don't
and
like...
you give me shit. That's one of the most critically
I've come to the
acclaimed
conclusion
games.
that I don't like Bethesda. And
Okay.
I hope that doesn't burn me with them in the future, but I don't like Bethesda because I don't feel they present a completed game when they release them. I still don't believe they've worked out the bugs.
Oh no, there are still Skyrim bugs. In fact, there are things you can download via Creation
I don't
Club.
know how in this day and age they can release games that aren't done.
Because Creation Club, for one.
Well, I mean, even without, they're not done. They don't finish games. They just release them. So I think I have an ethical problem with how they develop games and release them. I also have a problem with they seem to be hell-bent on, let's make a giant world but not give you a cohesive story.
See, once again, you didn't get more than an hour into it. So
I ended up
War
watching
stuff.
a bunch of videos of gameplay on it, and I was bored out of my mind. I don't like first-person RPGs.
That I'm willing to grant.
If I had the option to always be in a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, I might have had a better time with it.
I will admit, combat in that game is maybe a little weak.
It felt janky, very like it doesn't.
The swords
it doesn't
didn't have enough weight behind
and
it.
it doesn't move the way I would think it would move. The Witcher is better at that, and other games that do have first-person modes feel like you're swinging a sword. This just felt like Doom, like back in the day, where it's just like your hands are right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's that it's not as immersive as I would want for a game that's supposed to be immersive. And I thought the lore in that world was phenomenal. Though. I found the game to be very bland, like color scheme wise.
Well, if you only got an hour into it, I don't see where you possibly could have gone.
No, I'm after watching videos of it too.
Okay.
I just found it. I looked at it and I went, "This is something that's done a million times better with Dragon Age and other titles, as far as building a world and making you care, making you important to the center of that world, and having a cohesive story."
I don't know. I guess I won't find out for quite some time. I'm really disappointed you didn't like Skyrim because it's a game I wasted thousands of hours on.
It's one of those things where I see it and I go, I have absolutely no idea how anybody could like it. Like, I actually don't understand how people can like it at all. So
for me, it was the story and the lore. The lore drew me in. Basically, it felt like I was really playing D&D. Like, the depth, the books you could find, the little bits of conversation you'd hear. It felt like a lived-in world.
Which is all in Dragon Age and done significantly better with better voice acting, better visuals.
I'll grant to the voice acting.
Better visuals, better sound direction. But not
better choice.
I like having an open enough world that I can go off the beaten path and discover new things. But I also like...
I like the ability to fuck yourself. In Skyrim, you kill an important NPC, they're dead.
That's what I don't like.
I think that's fucking great.
I look at it and I go, okay...
That's real-world consequence.
That should be in a mode, like a certain mode, like a hardcore whatever mode. But I believe that I'm not buying a game to meander about for 300 hours walking around. I'm buying a game to get a story and experience.
But you have to find the story.
That's the problem. That's lazy storytelling.
I don't think so. Like, once again, you only got 2 hours in, so you didn't follow the path from the Civil War, which leads into the path of the Dragonborn and getting basically the story of Alduin and whatnot and what you have to accomplish.
I've come to the conclusion that, like, it's
a Bethesda thing.
It can die in a fire. I'm also offended at how many different releases, I'm saying in quotes, that they've done to improve the game have come out.
Like,
and
all the patches, is that what you mean?
The VR version, the PS4 you got to buy separately. The PS4 enhanced version, there's 2 or 3 versions of it for the PC. It comes out on every platform imaginable for years and years and years. They milk a game that's not complete and not fixed yet. So that's what I don't get. I have a problem with them suckering people out of money for it. So that's a personal opinion on that game. It's not.
What about Shadowrun?
Shadowrun, I did start playing. The problem is that's not an issue. I liked it. That's not an issue of me not wanting to beat it. That's an issue of me literally having 20 to 30 games on the go for review for companies.
Yeah.
So I just don't physically have the time to play it for fun. And when we did this challenge was when we were getting maybe generally 1 game a month for review.
Yeah,
each,
things really picked up this summer.
And I've got like 7 on the go right now.
I've got like 4 things on the go right now.
So it's and there's stuff in the bag that's got to be recorded. So it's literally, we're reviewing content for media and press purposes. I don't have time really for fun games at the moment.
And that's really unfortunate because
yeah,
I think Shadowrun playing those games is going to be the perfect primer for Terrible Warriors Cambridge Chronicles Season 2.
What I do like is that game will run on a computer that's like 12 years old.
Yeah, because it's optimized pretty much for any rig you can possibly have.
Yeah, I'm able to play it on max settings on my laptop that has integrated graphics.
Yeah, I'm probably going to download it to my laptop and just screw around with it just to get ideas for new Shadowrun campaign. So once again, I'm really sad you didn't get a chance to dig into those games.
And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying when I hate it because it's just going to sound good on the podcast. I fucking hate that game. Like with a seething passion. I would throw tomatoes at the creators.
That makes me really sad because it was one of the games that it made me appreciate fantasy again.
And I'm also one of those guys. I normally don't do this, but I get pissed off at the fanboy culture around it. How it's like they worship them, want to suck Bethesda's dick all day over it. And it's like, no. This is wrong on so many levels. Okay, I got to stop, or I'm just going to get more and more mad.
It's kind of funny how both the games we challenged each other were fantasy. I'm not a swords and sorcery guy, and I thought I would love Dragon Age.
Maybe that's why you like Bethesda's Skyrim, because it's not a good sword and sorcery game.
I don't know. I can't argue with the critical.
The only thing I get about it is I get that if you're one of those guys that likes to put 1 million hours into the same game, fine. I don't understand why people like MMOs either. So
yeah, so that's Tristan's thing. So
yeah, just.
So anyway, guys,
I'm trying to be polite.
Anyway, guys, we're gonna take a small break here on the show. We're gonna have our review of Little Dragon Cafe. We'll be back right after this.
Little Dragon's Cafe is an interesting title brought to us by Axis Games. It's sort of a hybrid between Harvest Moon and like a Tamagotchi monster raising aspect, as well as a little RPG simulation, and then at the same time also a cafe simulator. So that sounds like a lot. What it is you are constantly gathering different ingredients from the field around your cafe and using them to bake and cook brand new items and new dishes every couple days or so to create more complex items that you can then feed to your patrons. All the while under the guise of you're slowly raising this dragon from a hatchling into being this full-sized, monstrous dragon that is somehow going to help you get your mother out of a coma. Why is she in a coma? Well, it's because she's apparently half dragon herself, and the blood of the dragon and the human in her isn't mixing correctly. It's out of sync. So take that with a grain of salt. The story is wacky and out there. You encounter werewolves and thieves and mages and just all sorts of weird, funny characters that come in that you're supposed to end up creating, foods for. The idea behind the game is pretty interesting in that it's a very upbeat game. Everybody seems to come to you with their own problems, whether it be loneliness or they ran away from home in one case. And over the course of a few days or so of cooking for them, you'll end up making them a dish that helps them along their journey, and they end up becoming a better person because of it. It's about 25 hours or so to complete the game, depending on how fast you run through it. As you go on, you eventually unlock new ways of traversing the land around you that makes things move a lot quicker. So it depends on if you want to just explore everything or if you want to just blaze through the story. But I would say about 25 hours is about the sweet spot, I'd say. Now, this game is kind of dated looking in the graphics. Like, it's something you would have seen... I think you could have probably seen this in, like, the GameCube era. I'm playing this on the Nintendo Switch. There is also a PS4 version. They look pretty much identical from what I can see. The graphics are sort of cartoony, but very interesting in that they look like they were drawn with pencil crayons, which is very, very cool. It's something I haven't seen before in a game. I've seen games that have watercolor or, there's like Kirby's Epic Yarn where it looks like yarn, but not something that looked like it was drawn with pencil crayons and almost, I guess, like crayons, but more pencil crayons. Now, the music in it's pretty good. As you end up baking and cooking all the meals, it becomes sort of a one of those rhythm games where you're just pressing the buttons as you're supposed to, and that's pretty good. But it brings up the first issue I have with the game. There is a frame rate drop when you're playing these mini games, as well as just moving around. Sometimes you'll see things, jut into place, like it just loads in the background quickly, and it throws the frame rate down to a crawl. Like, we're talking 5 frames a second for maybe 2 seconds, and then it goes back up to normal, but it always feels a little jittery. It's something that you would have figured would have been probably edited out and patched out first day, but it doesn't seem to be that. There hasn't been an update to it to fix it. It is something that should be able to probably be fixed fairly soon, because this isn't even on a disc. There shouldn't be any jittery issues if it's loading directly from a solid state memory card. Now, the other issue I have with the game is there is a lot of loading screens. We're talking, you go into a door, loading screen. You leave, loading screen. Anything you do in this game seems to bring up a loading screen, which is surprising because there shouldn't be any loading screens when it's reading directly from memory. There's no moving parts in the Nintendo Switch. It should just be able to read it and move, especially since this isn't a very taxing game graphically. So, that out of the way, those are really the only 2 gripes I have about it. They don't really take away from the main enjoyment of the game. It's just something that seemed a little out of place. The rest of the game is fantastic. It's charming characters, engrossing, although shallow story. But it's just something I just wanted to keep playing and playing and playing. And in my course of review, I was having 3 or 4 hour sessions where I was just playing it and I didn't even realize the time had flown by, just harvesting, the crops and baking and cooking and then seeing all the wacky new characters coming into the shop. And it can get pretty hectic when you've got 20 patrons coming into the shop at the same time. So, all in all, I would say give this one, pick it up now, actually. I was going to say separately hold off until they make a patch for it. But you know what? It hasn't taken away really from my playthrough with the loading issues. So I would say actually go right ahead and pick it up, because I know it's going to be patched down the line, because this is just a brand new game. So that's Little Dragon's Cafe from Axis Games.
And we are back here on The Prototype, only on thisweekingeek.net. Don't forget to stay tuned after this discussion of Nintendo emulation, digital preservation. We'll be talking about SNK Heroines, where Alex will give you his impressions of that game. So let's kind of dive right into it. So as you guys know, in the last couple of weeks during the month of August and into September, several large emulation sites were shut down, threatened by a lawsuit by Nintendo and others to take down ROMs. The emulators are still available, but the ROMs are not.
Well, that's because emulators themselves are protected. They're original creations, and as long as they're not physically cracking a hardware or using the actual software that came with the systems, like as long as they're not taking a BIOS from a system and reverse engineering it, a lot of times they're made to then use the BIOS that's officially available. So they're not illegal. And technically ROMs aren't either. They're in a gray category. ROMs, for the sake of preservation, anybody can store ROMs that they own themselves. You're allowed to make backups by any means necessary that doesn't break encryption of your own previous games, for your own library, for your own archival purposes in case something happens to the product that you bought. Now, that's what's contested a lot of times by software companies, is they're saying, like Nintendo or EA or anybody that has old titles, especially in the old ROM format, they're saying, no, you've bought a service, you've bought a license to use it. But that's technically not the case when it came to prior to the online age of, let's say, the PS3 era onward. Before systems were online, you bought the hardware. You bought the right to use the game, but you bought the physical hardware. Anything that you have with the hardware, you can do with as you please. You only break things if you go online and you abuse their online services. So it's technically not illegal. It is illegal to share them technically, depending on the state, country that you're in and what their laws are. Like, for instance, in Canada, it is illegal to upload them and constantly be sharing with people that you can't verify already own a copy of it, because it's not archival. But it is not illegal to download ROMs.
Really?
So it's illegal to host them publicly.
Okay.
And even then, they've never really been enforced on that. In the States, I believe it's a gray area, and it's state-by-state basis. So
yeah, because I think this case, they went after guys in Arizona, I want to say. And the guy was like, well, I can't defend this.
And interestingly enough, are we talking about the EMU Paradise site?
Yeah.
They could defend it. You know why they could defend it? They only went after them, or there's probably two reasons.
I think some of the facts on this one are wrong, simply because I know one of the lawsuits was filed in Arizona. I don't know whether the guy from EMU Paradise was from Arizona. I don't know whether he's that guy or if it's a different guy.
But with EMU Paradise, I can tell you two reasons, in my opinion, why they were targeted specifically. Not just their size, like, because they had a vast collection that was public-facing. You didn't need a password to get to. You didn't need to be a member or anything. It was, one, Nintendo is trying to launch their online service with their ROMs. That's basically what you're getting, is you're getting a ROM with an emulator when you get the Switch Internet Pass. What are they calling that service? The Nintendo game service with it?
Or something like that.
Yeah, the NES, whatever. They're not calling it Classics. They're not calling it, previous Virtual Console. I don't even know what they're calling that specific service.
It's not even the Virtual Console. I don't know what
it's something else. But that's one reason they want to launch that, so they want to get rid of that. Actually, there's probably three. Second reason, the NES Classic and the SNES Classic are easily hacked. You could add any ROM you wanted.
Yep, that's true. Because I know people personally.
Yes.
Their NES Classics hold, I think, almost the entire library.
Yeah, the NES Classic holds 300 megs of data, or 3 something or other. It was released online.
Yeah. And
reality is like 30 megs is used up.
Yeah.
With the ROMs. So it can store anything you want. So people easily hacked it. It's just you plug it in your computer, you press a button, you install a piece of software. It circumvents you get your warranty anymore. That's what they can do. They can void your warranty for tampering. But there are many people that go, okay, well, I have like 150 NES titles sitting on my shelf.
What are you going to do? Bust me with that?
You know what? I'm going to put ROM back up so I can play them there, so I don't have to swap my cartridges out.
Yeah.
And the argument Nintendo will make is, no, you bought it to use on that one piece of hardware, and that if it doesn't work anymore, it's too bad. So I get sort of where they're coming from. That's just greedy in a lot of people's eyes. And legally, they have the right to do with what they want. It means if they void the warranty on their device and it stops working, that they're shit out of luck. So that's the second factor. The third one, and they say it's because they're losing money on it and all this. No. What they went after Emu Paradise and other sites like that for is
the advertising.
The advertising on the site. They didn't make money selling the ROMs, which is traditionally why a lot of these sites didn't get shut down, is they weren't making money off of it. But Emu Paradise and a few of the others were making easily, because they were getting unique hundreds of thousands of hits per month. They were easily making multiple millions of dollars a year in advertising. Every click made an ad pop up. Every download, there's like 7 or 8 ads on every page. Like, they were easily worth, they say they're worth nothing, they're liars. They're easily worth $5 to $10 to $15 million. They could fight it. Nintendo could fight forever, but they'd rather just shut up, not want to argue that because if they go to court, then they have to argue, they might lose the money they earned through it.
Yeah.
So they would rather just comply, shut down, take their money and leave and live a happy life.
Now, my big thing is I don't have a problem with ROMs for the most part. Now, I'm a big believer in digital preservation, and with Nintendo recently launching their online service, clearly Nintendo owns the copyright to all these, to this entire library, correct?
Yes.
So,
unless they were ones that were published by second and third party developers.
But would they not own something from that?
Nothing. They have to pay them.
Okay, well, Nintendo has all this money in the world. They're a giant company.
Yep.
I'd like to know why they don't just... Their library is something like 700 games, not all of them good. In fact, a lot of them terrible. Curate 200 really, really good ones. Like, do it like Netflix. Curate your best 200 games, pay those companies however much they want, and launch your online service like that. This way, the games are preserved. They're on a server somewhere, at least.
Yep.
And you can play them on your console. I think that'd be really great.
I actually get the feeling that they said that they were very coy about how the service works. Mm-hmm. I think you don't even download it. I think you have to be connected online to play.
Oh, absolutely. I assure you of that.
And the reason they're going NES with that is that means that it can
less
load...
lag?
It's because the whole games are like 500 kilobytes.
Yeah.
So they can load directly into memory.
Yeah, you might see the odd game that's maybe a couple of megs, but not likely. As I think the NES was at max, 4 megs?
4 megabit, which meant it was 512 kilobytes.
Okay.
So the Final Fantasy 3 that we didn't even get here is that big. Mario is like 8 or 16 kilobytes. Like, we're talking so small that you could fit it on
a text message
on your memory card on your Switch.
Yeah.
You could fit it several billion times.
Wow.
That's how small it is. So there's no reason why they couldn't just download it to your system and then have a check online to... But they're probably going to make it an online service directly streaming it. Now,
that's annoying.
It is, and they refuse to add a trophy system. They refuse... There's a lot of things they're not doing, and it's because Nintendo doesn't know online, and they probably never will. They don't care. They're doing this out of necessity. They have to catch up now.
Now, one of the things I'd like to know, we talked about this on the earlier Twig podcast you heard earlier in the week. We talked about how no one gives a rat's ass about NES anymore. I'd like to know why they're not offering their library out to the Super Nintendo, the N64, etc., etc. Clearly, the Switch.
They see dollar signs. They'll milk it. Everything. They're as bad as Capcom and as EA. They will milk it as much as they can.
That makes me so sad because they have such a huge library. People want it. Just give it to us.
Why have we still not received Mother 3, like the Earthbound sequel?
I have a feeling that's someone holding a personal grudge somewhere.
They say that there's musical issues with some of the rights because it's too close to things.
Change it. Hire a different composer.
Because you know what? It'll sell.
Yeah.
But they don't care. Sometimes Nintendo has been, and I love Nintendo, but they've been very petty in the past. If somebody is slighted or they think they've been slighted in a certain way, they will bury a developer. They will bury a programmer. They're known, and same for some of the same tactics that Konami has done, where
with Hideo Kojima,
not with him, with some of the other people, where if you do something to piss them off, they won't fire you because that means that you'll go to a competition. They will make you a janitor. You'll stay within the company. They'll say, okay, you're demoted to this, and it's against face to quit in most of those companies, unless you're so high. Kojima was so big he could leave and make his own company.
Oh yeah,
but any mid-level person who has an idea to make a game, they might even make it in their spare time. They might have had like, look, here's a sequel to F-Zero. I've got it like 75% done. They go, we didn't approve of it. We're never releasing it now because you went behind our back. Whereas other companies traditionally would go,
embrace the.
Hey, you know what? That's a cool idea. That's what happened at Sony. That's how the PlayStation was created. It was originally a guy that worked for them, an engineer, went and made a CD device and made a deal with Nintendo behind the backs of the CEO of the company. The board of directors wanted to fire him and demote him and do all these things to destroy his career. The CEO happened at the time to like his initiative, and then they were going to make the SNES CD-ROM.
Yeah.
And then Nintendo, again, at the time, felt greedy and they went behind their back and went with Philips. And then that fell apart too. Nintendo has been abysmal at new technology. It's just been a fluke that the Wii worked, and because they viewed it as a toy, and that the Switch worked. It's honestly a fluke because they've never been at the forefront of technological advancement.
Well, what about the 3DS, for example?
It's not. It's a gimmick. It's a toy gimmick. Look, they've abandoned it entirely.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So they do gimmicks to get you hooked, and then they just a lot of times they hit and they work. They're seen as they think of themselves as a software company that happens to make hardware, whereas everybody else in the gaming industry that makes consoles believes that they are a hardware company making software on the side. Software is where they get the money in the back end, but their bread and butter is the hardware. So there's very different philosophies, and Nintendo has always been. You ask any fan, they'll say they don't do online well. So we won't get a good online service from them until later this generation or maybe the next generation.
Now, when it comes down to digital preservation, there's one company that I think does this tremendously well. Xbox.
Yeah.
And they do it via backwards compatibility. Now, they haven't released all the titles that were available on Xbox Live Arcade, mostly due to licensing issues and stuff like that. But the Xbox survives on backwards compatibility. For example, as I talked about in the beginning of this episode, Splinter Cell Blacklist. I thought I'd have to haul out my old 360 for that. Now, I can't play the X-Men or the Simpsons arcade game or Scott Pilgrim vs. the World because those are online-only games. Or, sorry, those are digital download. But I can if they ever choose to release it. Whereas Sony's backwards compatibility is streaming via PS Now.
Yeah, and that, don't be surprised if that goes away. They're trying to do a push on it. Nobody's getting it.
I don't know anybody who does.
Well, they nerfed the online. People don't realize that the PS3's cell system, the CPU system they had in it, is technically more powerful than what's in the PS4 Pro.
Really?
The CPU. It's the GPU that's not. It's a very complex CPU to program for. So they're bottlenecked by the fact that they had like 256 or 512 megs of RAM for the entire system. So there's like, at that point, 16 times the amount of RAM in the PS4 and the Pro. And the GPU, the graphics processor, is way better in the PS4 and the 4 Pro. But the PS3 CPU was so good that the emulation that was done for, especially the software for the PS1, it was all done in software. Like it wasn't offloaded to the GPU, and it wasn't like they had to code a lot. It was basically running an emulator, and it ran at full speed, if not better. Now they nerfed it when they went to the PS4. Not, I don't think, because it couldn't run it, but there'd be more effort involved in having to make it work. So that's why we have these PS2 games that they release every 3 or 4 months at a $15 or $20 price point.
Yeah, which kind of pisses me off because we know the system can do it.
Yeah, like there's no reason why they couldn't just have the PS1 support still.
I want to know why PS4 does not have older PSN games that don't run, that are purely emulation or purely
like
digital.
The classics basically is one, because once the PS3 servers go offline, you're done with that.
Which sucks, because I have games like Marvel vs. Capcom, Darkstalkers Resurrection, the Simpsons game I mentioned, the X-Men game.
The first couple Wild Arms games, a lot of cool RPGs that are expensive as hell to get physically now.
Yeah, and just, it bothers me, because it seems, like I said, Xbox at least offers you backwards compatibility. Sony doesn't want to. They keep pushing this online service that nobody wants.
But online preservation, the free games you get from Games with Gold or the PS Plus service, they're good forever as long as...
Except PlayStation, if you lose your subscription, they're gone.
No, in that...
Double check that.
As soon as you resubscribe... I was gone I was gone for 2 years. You're back.
Yeah.
And your cloud saves are there forever. Forever. As long as the server's up. That's one big stickler that Nintendo's going to have problems with, is they're not going to keep your saves forever.
That's stupid.
So,
because how much space does that realistically take up?
Nothing. But they don't know how to handle online. They don't know that service. They didn't do enough research or care to do enough to really compete. So it is cheaper than, like, you're paying $80 for
Xbox
Live or PS Plus, and you're paying $25 for the Nintendo service. But I would have rather paid $70 for Nintendo if it meant way better service.
Yeah, I would pay more for Nintendo if it meant I got to keep certain games or get something classic. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Nintendo's service, to me, in a sense, has value because it is so cheap, but you don't get anything, unlike PSN or Xbox
That
Live.
online service, what it should let you do is it should let you plug a USB hard drive into your dock, and when you have it docked, it should let you install games to that drive that only work with your system. Like we're talking, it can have DRM and everything on it, but the internal storage, I've got a 200 gig in mine, and that was $110 when I bought it. So, like, for that kind of money, I could get myself a 2 terabyte or 3 terabyte drive that plugs in, which the PS4 and the Xbox allow you to play games off of an external drive. So there, you could have your whole archive of your games all in one spot.
Yeah, because that's what I used to do with my Wii U, is I had all my big games were on an external drive.
And the fact that they don't allow that, I know they're like, well, how would it work if you have it unplugged? It just, all it has to do is you have a folder that X's out and it says you can't access this title until you plug it back into the dock.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. Like, or I should have an option, move to internal storage. So, like, there's a lot of things that they can improve on, and they probably will for the sake of money. But, yeah, like, as far as archival things go, I don't think physical media is going anywhere right now because there'd be such an uproar.
And it's funny, I'm moving away from physical media. I'm going almost exclusively digital. And there's a case right now, there was a incident, where a guy bought a bunch of movies on iTunes, and iTunes is like, well, it's not available anymore, so here's a rental on us. But I paid $10. Yeah,
and they're like, no, you paid for the right to own it, to view it. You don't own it. They worded it as he owned the lease to use it, which basically means a rental that lasts 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit when it's the same price as buying it physical.
And then even some games get delisted, for example. I know one that I can think of that affects me personally is Xbox 360 had a game called Afterburner Climax, and that's a game produced by Sega. I don't even think you could download that game.
It's the same as I have the PT demo.
Yep, I used to have that, and then my hard drive crashed, and now I can never get it back.
Interestingly enough, I was able to find it back in my library and get it. It just showed up randomly. I cannot search for it in the store. It's in my library.
Yeah, same here. It's in my library, but you can't download it.
Oh, is that? Okay, I haven't looked to even try it.
Actually, when that first came out, I remember I thought about selling my PlayStation 4 because there were people buying PlayStation 4s that had that game installed. I saw several go for easily $1,500 to $2,000.
Well, and it's because I don't know if it's true to the state, but I don't think the system's been hacked yet.
PlayStation 4?
Yeah.
I don't know.
to play games that you install yourself. Like, I don't think it has a homebrew hack. It might have at one point, but they keep patching it. Whereas the PS3, anybody that had a game that disappeared from the PS3 store, it doesn't really matter because a lot of people at this point are unlocking their systems. Because it's not dead yet, but it's at end of life cycle. And usually when something hits end of life cycle, it's when you get the crack that unlocks everything in the system, and then you can do with it what you want. You can make it an emulator machine. You can make it a machine that backs up your games to a hard drive that you legally own, that you have the right to do that with. As long as you're not profiting off of it, it's not illegal.
See, that's something I wouldn't mind turning my PlayStation 3 into an emulation machine, because
what kind do you have? Do you have the big thick one or the slim?
The slim now.
You cannot.
Oh.
It only worked on a certain firmware version, and it only worked. That firmware version had to be on the original fat size.
See, I had a fat PS3 that was the PS2 compatible version. It was the Metal Gear Solid 4 version.
Was it the hardware compatible or the software one?
Hardware.
Because the most expensive ones are people that have had the reseating of the heat sinks and the resoldering and everything on those, basically, so that they're brand new and they won't have the overheating issue. People that have those modded, those things can go for like $1,000.
Yeah, I had one. I had the Metal Gear Solid 4 version because I did some work for a website, and they're like, "Mike, what do you want, PlayStation?" It wasn't even a question. But yeah, I remember it died due to the yellow light of death.
Yeah, so the overheating issue.
So I didn't know whether I could bring it back, so I sold it for parts.
Yeah, that works. I mean,
I'm sad because it was my baby PlayStation.
So like there's people that are on two sides of the fence. Like they're like, oh, okay, it's fine. Back up, do whatever you want. And then there's other people that go, that's piracy. That's not if you already own the stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, and here's the thing: a lot of games don't have demos. And there's no rental stores anymore, so maybe you'd want to try the game before you go and buy it. And I know people that have done that, where they will get a pirated, I'm saying in quotes, copy of a game, play the first hour, turns out they love it, then they end up going and buying the game. So I think a lot of times it's availability that makes people do things.
Well, yeah, because if you told me, hey Mike, I want you to play Saturday Night Slam Masters, which is a Capcom Era 2 fighting wrestling beat-em-up game, yeah, I'm not going to go out and buy the CPS2 board unless I'm fucking sure.
Yeah.
So I want to try a game before I buy. And that's another thing to remember, too, about this whole digital preservation thing we haven't even talked about. Arcades are disappearing.
Yeah.
And those ROMs are rotting.
There are websites and groups dedicated to replacing every capacitor. I forget,
or BIOS chips.
I forget the exact term for it, but there's a term for it where you take every ROM chip off.
A ROM dump or whatever?
No, not actually. Dumping a ROM is when you take and make a backup of it.
Okay.
I'm talking you physically remove each of the chips, you remove the bad solder, you clean it with alcohol, and then you reseat the chips or add new chips to it. Basically, it makes the board like it was brand new again.
Kind of like rebuilding a car.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of times they end up using new capacitors and things that won't just last 20 years. They might last 50 or 100.
Oh, wow.
Because they're just better technology now.
Because there's certain arcade games. I know when I bought my first arcade machine about 10 years ago, I had, I guess it was a pirate board. Or, sorry, no, my first arcade game I ever bought was a legit copy of Marvel vs. Capcom, or X-Men vs. Street Fighter, either way. And mine had a suicide battery, which means if I didn't replace it, the ROM was locked out. And it was only up until the last couple of years that the coding was broken on it, I think. But if you replaced the battery, then you were fine. And that battery would last, 10 years or some bullshit like that. But yeah, so many arcade games being lost because certain ones are just in collections, or they maybe have never been put online.
Well, or they used... Here's the thing. Sometimes, put online. For the most part, I think the MAME is one of the things where, if you notice, MAME hasn't had a lot of websites taken down because it's a collection of multiple arcade games. And you'd think that Capcom or one of these big companies would try to take down the MAME project. It's not. MAME is designed as an archival purpose, because there are games that have been dumped but nobody's played them, or there are cases where people have recovered the last surviving board
Yeah.
and then backed it up, and that's the only reason they've been able to reduplicate it again. It's sometimes this happens where the developer, the creator of the game, has lost either their code for it, or they've lost the hardware. They might have even lost the specs on how to reproduce it, and then they end up finding out that somebody found a copy, dumped it, did a new technical manual on how to repair it, and they end up using the fan-created version.
Yeah, like, I can't imagine digital preservation losing arcade games. Because because there were so many produced in the 80s and 70s.
It's not even digital. Like, you can expand it even to pinball.
Yeah.
Pinball has been on the decline, but now there's Stern and I think
Bally
and Gottlieb maybe. There's a few companies still making them, and some of them are really good. It's just they're not maintaining, even getting parts for a lot of the old ones. Some of them are common parts, but there are communities out there that go and restore
or 3D print or build.
Yes, that sometimes they have to do that, and that's what 3D printing has helped with. So even physical, mechanical coin ops are, disappearing.
Yeah, so digital preservation at the end of the day is ultimately really important. Hopefully these companies will see the value. If you provide it to us, we will come.
Here's the thing. If you make it available and you make it reasonable, people will do it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you told me I could download any game I wanted from the Xbox library or any game I wanted from the Super Nintendo library and I'd have to pay a little bit extra a month, okay.
Yeah, but if Nintendo was like, we'll give you every Nintendo game that we ever made, like 400 or whatever it is, or 700, I don't even know how many there are.
700 and something.
700 something. But they'll go, okay, it's $700 a year?
No.
They can't do it. Like,
but if you told me it was, say, $50?
If it was the entire library for $100 a year,
yeah.
I think people would do it.
Yeah. Despite, some questionable quality. But that's pretty much going to do it for our discussion of digital preservation, emulation, and whatnot. We're going to talk about Alex's new review he's doing on the Nintendo Switch. That's going to be SNK Heroines. Now, this is something I'm interested in the concept. So give me your review. Fire away.
Fire away with the review?
Yeah.
I'll start with saying I like it.
But...
if you're like me, I like fighting games on a not casual level. I would say an intermediate, fun with the family player. I'm not a competitive player like you are.
You're not playing Street Fighter.
No, I'm not buying I have an NES Advantage, but that doesn't count. I'm not buying the boards and all that sort of stuff to play, arcade perfect controls.
Yeah.
But there's been sort of a lack of fighting games that aren't Street Fighter.
Yeah, or Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, and there's some Neo Geo arcade ones that are available to download, but they're few and far between. As far as new fighting games, there's not a whole lot on the system.
Yeah, there aren't very many new IPs out there.
Yeah, as of yet, for sure. So, right, SNK is celebrating an anniversary, a pretty big one actually.
40th, I want to say.
Yeah, and they're putting out and actually, I believe, come out now. The SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy. What is that? It is a fighting game starring different SNK characters, but all the female characters, and they're all fighting. There's a generic storyline of some guy trying to manipulate them and all of them to fight for his whim and blah, blah, blah. It's sort of goofy Japanese fanboy wackiness. The standard stuff you come to expect in most Japanese weird anime fighting games. The one thing that they did add is they had to add Terry from the King of Fighters series, but he's now a girl.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, okay, that's weird, but okay, it's a cool character design.
Yeah, and there's shirts that say Fatal Cutie on it, and it's actually pretty funny. All the moves are the same. Now, this game is not your traditional fighter where you have a million combinations that you do, down to back, hold this, plus forward. No, it's more simplified. It's more like Pokemon, or like Smash Brothers.
Okay.
You press back and a button, or forward and a button, or down and a button, or you press back and a button, and then while they're in the air, you can juggle them by pressing another button.
Okay.
So it's a very streamlined fighting game. So anybody can pick up and play it, but to master it, there's a little bit of depth.
Kind of like how Smash has a lot of depth.
Very similar, not as in depth as that, as technical as that. I'll be honest, from the trailer I saw for it before I received the review copy, I thought it was a little jerky looking, but it turns out that was just the encode of the actual trailer.
Okay.
It's actually very smooth. It's very pretty. It has cool special effects, and the characters have a nice flow. There is boob physics in it because, that's the thing that they have in all these games. There's got to be jiggle physics somewhere. But that being said, it's not gratuitous, and it suits the style. It's your standard cartoony King of Fighters look, with a little more of a 3D sparkly accent to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You get to play 2-on-2 fighters. So one is your support, and as you're beating up the enemy, you can swap back to your support character whenever you want. And in doing so, if you've built up your meter a certain length, you can press a button combination that will do the finisher move. And if a person on the other side isn't charged up to a certain point, there's a few conditions that can be met. You'll hit them, and it'll finish them off and kill them. And, they'll fly off the screen, and then in almost like Street Fighter style, like, that sort of thing. You know what I'm talking about there.
I do. So here's my question to you as your final verdict on this. I'm a competitive fighter.
Yes.
Am I going to dig this?
I think you'll dig it. It is the game you bring out for parties. It's not because anybody can play it. This is a game that your mom can play, your dad can play, your kids can play, your wife, your brother, anybody.
Do you see a tournament scene coming up around this?
I see this. No, I see this being the game that at the tournaments or at a con they throw up for anybody that just wants casual play and fun.
So filthy casual, okay.
Yes, you have a few drinks and you're going to have a lot of fun partying around with your buddies.
I like it.
So yeah, I would say, and there is parts you can unlock extra costumes. There is that sort of thing. There's a progression. There's a story mode. The standard stuff you come to expect. It's pretty straightforward. I would recommend it if you're a fighting fan. If you're not a fighting fan, you don't want to get it anyway.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're a fighting fan, or if you just like games that you want to play at parties with your buddies,
okay,
it's definitely worth it.
All right, so that's Alex's review of SNK Tag Team Heroes.
SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy.
Tag Team Frenzy. I kind of got the name. Anyway. So anyway, hopefully you've had a fun time enjoying listening to the Prototype for this month of September. We will be back next month as we talk about Broketober. Some of the games we'll be playing will be Assassin's Creed Odyssey, WWE 2K19, Red Dead Redemption 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Is there anything else I missed? Starlink, Valkyria Chronicles.
There is a bunch.
Oh my God, your wallet's going to hate you.
Bunch of
Hate
games.
you so much. So anyway, guys.
Mega Man, you said that right?
Yes, Mega Man 11 is going to be coming out. So make sure you're getting in touch with us at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Definitely want to hear from you. We do enjoy interacting with you on Twitter and Facebook. So that's at This Week in Geek on Twitter, This Week in Geek on Facebook. Make sure you're tagging the right one of us. There are two of us on there. We're the one that has been around the longest, and we're cooler than those guys.
We're number one?
Yeah,
we're number one.
We're number one. You don't like it? Fucking come take us on, other twig.
We're number one. You don't like it? You get to eat number two.
That's right, bastards. Anyway, so hopefully you've had a fun time with us. So until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd saying live for your Die Hard. We'll catch you guys again next time right here on thisweekingeek.net.
Johnny got a toy golf set when he was 3, and from that day on, he was hooked. All he wanted to do was golf, golf, golf. He'd be on the links before school, after school. All he ever wanted was to go pro. And then, one day, when he was holding his grandson and thinking about his 12 handicap, Johnny realized it just might not happen for him. But you know what did happen for him? He switched to Geico and saved a bunch of money on car insurance. So that was good, and so was hanging out with his grandson.
I can't believe it.
That Gerald is presenting the quarterly budget report with finger puppets?
Look, here comes a 1.7% decrease in fixed overhead. Hello, everybody.
No, I can't believe how easy it was to save hundreds of dollars on my car insurance with Geico.
Who are you? The projected increase in organic Q3 revenue. Hooray!
Believe it, Geico could save you 15% or more on car insurance.